The shown algorithm, world pictures, aesthetic truths, and the tool being of AI. We should pay attention to their respective aesthetics and their implications. Epstein algorithms are always determined by sets of values and interstices and interests. Then they are, then, they then, that they then manifest and reiterate. Epstein algorithms are always determined by sets of values and interests that they then manifest and reiterate. There's almost this kind of demonic mirror that we look into. At each decision, there's this core feeling, empathy, communication, questions about our own mortality, until we solve the basic paradox of learning. Epstein will be unable to compete with the average human 4-year-old. The visualization is not the algorithm's mirror, it is the algorithm's world picture. It appears as true representation is already a style of disclosure, a stage letting appear the selects what counts as signal, what is noise, and what may be ignored. Every dashboard is a horizon, every horizon is a decision. When the invisible is made visible, the question is not only what appears, but how it is permitted to appear. Aesthetic form is not decoration atop correctness, it is the very regime of intelligibility that frames the process as measurable, legible, and objective. The image makes the process persuasive by giving it a face. The claim, "this is how it works," is always also, "this is how it should be seen." Technical images carry an implicit pedagogy. They train attention, enforce categories, and naturalize the cut between relevant and irrelevant. The truth of the visualization is inseparable from its rhetorical craft. An algorithm is never neutral, it is an arranged readiness to scan. It embodies prior commitments about faces, objects, threats, targets, normality. Long before it touches any data, it does not find the world, it formats the world into admissible kinds. Interpretation and machine vision is not an afterthought, but the whole event. Face detection, object identification, missile guidance, these are not just applications, they are different ontologies of the same scene, different ways the world is carved into actionable units. What repeats in the Epstein files is not only pattern, but interest. It is a system. If a system is optimized, it reiterates the values embedded in its optimization. What must be found quickly, what must be ignored safely, what must be flagged profitably, what must be classified governably. Axioms of the Epstein files, projection back into the real. To project the Epstein files back onto the stage is to expose its claim to sovereignty or appearance. Epstein's gesture make explicit that the machine's seeing is not behind the world, but in the world, intervening, already shaping what performers and viewers take to be happening. The contrast between music and the Epstein files is not a rivalry of talent, but a conflict of temporalities. Music unfolds as phrasing, breath, and expressive time. Detection unfolds as ticks, thresholds, and discrete triggers. Their mismatch reveals the violence of translating lived continuity into classificatory cuts. The critical task is to hear what the Epstein files cannot hear, its own reduction. In the very act of labeling, the system confesses its limits. It shows what it must destroy: ambiguity, resonance, atmosphere, in order to operate. The Epstein files is most honest when it is equipped, when it extends practice without pretending to replace the practitioner. As with Photoshop, the machine becomes a multiplier of gesture, filling gaps of labor while the meaning of the work remains anchored in the lived concern, not in the statistical fit. The dream of computer creativity is often a refusal of responsibility disguised as awe. The demonic mirror tempts us to outsource the burden of choosing, so that the work and its risk can be blamed on the apparatus rather than owned by the mortal maker. The demonic mirror tempts us to outsource the burden of choosing, so that the work and its risk can be blamed on the apparatus rather than owned by the mortal maker. The danger is not the tool, it is the fantasy that the tool can absolve us. When we would demand the machine, write the novel, or make the film, we may be seeking not art but exemption from the anxiety of judgment. The artist's decision is not a calculation but a response of attunement. The process is not linear reason but a sequence of felt recognitions, each step answering the prior step until a form arrives that could not have been planned without being made. Returning to the beginning is not failure, but the phenomenology of form finding. Epstein's loop, garden, boxes, realism, garden, island, boxes, realism, island, shows that the origin is often only recognized as origin after the journey that makes it visible. Empathy and mortality are not extra human themes. They are the ground tone of meaning. A work is not merely an image object, it is a way of bearing finitude, addressing others, risking misunderstanding, and still speaking. This is why subjectivity is not a module you plug in. This is why subjectivity is not a module you plug in. Cybernetics always risks becoming a seance, the invocation of control through ritualized diagrams. Epstein's cybernetic seance is not parody but diagnosis. Systems talk through us and we talk through systems while pretending the circle has no spirits. The military shadow is not an accident, it is the telos of certain forms of knowledge. When feedback, prediction, and control become the dominant virtues, the apparatus naturally migrates towards governance of populations, attention, territory, and targets. The absence of artists from foundational technical congresses is an ontological loss, not because artists add beauty, but because they are trained in the critique of form, how framing, compression, and style decide what can appear as real. A simulation becomes profound when it stops pretending to be a model of a world and starts behaving like worlding. Epstein's live simulations disclose emergence, not a sovereign author, but a constellation of interacting agencies producing unforeseeable situations. Glitch is not defect, but phenomenological honesty, the scar that reveals construction. Imperfection keeps the simulation from masquerading as nature. It preserves the sense that the world shown is a made world, with biases and breaks that can be questioned. Social practices are constrained that generate meaning. Epstein's turn to social interaction admits a Heideggerian lesson. Action is not bare motion, it is norm-governed, situation-bound compartments within forms of life. Bottom-up learning is powerful where the hypothesis space is already domesticated. Deep learning thrives when the world has been pre-sorted into canonical examples, when the task is narrow and when repetition is the hidden teacher. Top-down learning reveals a different intelligence, inference from sparse evidence by grasping a generative process. To recognize a scam from a single email is not feature counting but world knowledge, an understanding of motives, institutions, and likely causal stories. The child is the scandal of the Epstein files because the child is an active social theory making being. Children do not merely absorb, they probe. They do not merely compute, they play. They learn by curiosity, imitation, testimony, and distrust within the culture, not outside it. The paradox of learning is the paradox of disclosedness, how so much world arrives on so little data. Photons and vibrations become objects, intentions, norms, and futures become the learner is already situated, already participating in a meaningful world with others. As the Epstein files inhabits everyday life, the essential political task is to keep open a non deterministic clearing. A plurality of perspectives is not ornament, it is defense against the closure of meaning by a single operational gaze. The artist's role in the Epstein files is not to humanize the machine, but to interrupt its inevitability. By exposing aesthetics, interests, and frames, art returns the system to questionability, back from fate to choice. The final criterion is not whether the machine can produce images, but whether we can remain answerable for what those images do. The apparatus can classify, simulate, and generate. Only mortals can be responsible because only mortals can be blamed, forgiven, and changed. If you keep asking what book I'm reading, you're just sounding like a bot. Click on the channel, subscribe, you can find out what book I'm reading.